my extruded friends. Look at me. I'm amongst the giants. I've got an extruded aluminum refrigerator module and another refrigerator module. I've got a galley module and I've got a wall cabinet, all made from 80/20 extruded aluminum. Extruded aluminum. You all know what this is, but I thought I would go in and give you some tips and tricks that I've picked up over the last 2.5 years working with 80/20 extruded aluminum. And yes, I need to get something off my chest right away. Full transparency, I'm working off a list. That's right, I said it. If I just left the paper here or just off camera, and every once in a while you saw me do that with my eyes, you'd go, ah, he's reading. He's reading from a teleprompter. Generally, I do it off the cuff. I don't prepare at all. I just hit record and I just throw up. But there are some details that I needed to cover, so I made a list. The first thing that you need to know when you're working with 80/20 aluminum, 80/20 is the brand name. The product itself, the material, is called extruded aluminum. 80/20 is a brand name. It's the brand that I've chosen to use. It's an American company. It's a super high quality product. Precision is their middle name. I've never had a problem with them. I've been buying direct. This is not a paid commercial for them, not at all. Not at all. I stick with good vendors. I stick with good products. So let's get into this. The first thing you've got to know is when you cut extruded aluminum, you need a special blade on your chop saw. I went so far as to buy a chop saw specifically made to cut metal. The LC 1230. And then I put a blade on it that's specific to cutting aluminum, non-ferrous metals. You can buy a blade for steel, you can buy a blade for aluminum. So that's the first step, is to get a good aluminum blade. Now the blade's not made of aluminum, the blade is made from steel, but the teeth are designed in such a way that it cuts aluminum. And after 3 years of working with 80/20, I've come to learn how important precision is. For instance, I used to make my own corner brackets. No more. Why? Precision. You make your own corner brackets and they're not dead on, you're gonna bite yourself in the ass down the road. You're gonna be off kilter, you're gonna be out of square. You try to get drawer glides to run smoothly when your brackets are at, it's not worth it. It's not worth the time and effort. Buy the 80/20 brackets. Buy the 80/20 bridge plates. Believe me, after 3 years and 4 vans, I'm telling you, that's what I do now. Yes, it costs more, long run, everybody's happy, everybody's happy. The main concern when you're working with 80/20, in my opinion, is getting all of your T-nuts and your fixtures loaded on the profile before you lock it in, or as they call it, captivate it, okay? Once you've captivated a channel, you can't get a T-nut in there, or you can't get the standard T-nut in there. Let me explain. There's a word that you want to repeat to yourself over and over and over, like a mantra when you're working with 80/20. Preload, preload, preload. What that means is getting your T-nuts and your fittings into the channel before you lock that channel in place and captivate it. You see this channel right here? This is not captivated because I can still get a T-nut in there. This one here is not captivated because I can still get a T-nut in there after it's been assembled. The ends are open. This channel is captivated. Both ends have been closed off. I can't get my T-nut in there. So what you want to do is pre-plan and preload your profile. Put your little fittings okay, I'm gonna come clean with you. 80/20 does make what they call a drop-in or a roll-in T-nut. It's made specifically for when you find yourself with a captivated profile channel that you still need to get a T-nut in and you don't want to, or you can't take it apart to open the end. You can roll in a roll-in T-nut. They offer the same strength, same thread count. They're a little bit more money. It's kind of like they're punishing you for not planning accordingly. You have to pay more for a roll-in if you screwed up. Well, you know, with me, it's a matter of principle. I am not going to use those roll-ins. That is the last resort. So what I do is I will lay down my module and I'll lay it out and I will loose fit the whole thing together. I don't bear down, I loose fit. Then I take the module into the van. And I put it in place and I study it. I see where my anchor points to the van are. Did I put a T-nut there or do I need one? I'll make some notes. I'll get all that sussed, bring the module back out on the table, make my adjustments, take it in a second time, go through that routine again, make sure nothing's changed, I didn't want to add anything, blah, blah, blah. Now comes back out, it's ready to be locked down. At that point, I will take each screw out one at a time and douse it with Loctite and put it back in and bear down. You don't want to Loctite your screws during the planning stage or the loose fit stage. That's just going to waste your Loctite. You're not going to get a good bond. And I have to say that I believe Loctite is a big player, big important player when you're putting 80/20 in a van. These little channel wings, these channel flanges are arced in slightly. So when you tighten up that T-nut, you create a bend, you create this force that kind of acts like a lock washer. That, coupled with Loctite, you're good to go. Van number 1 came back, as you know. It lives in Southern California. It's been on the road now for over a year. She has actually traversed this continent 4 times in that year and a half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She's on her 5th trip across the country because she's headed home now. 5 trips across the country in a year and a half. And I did the tighten up. There was not one bolt that had shook loose. There wasn't one bolt I had to rack on. Now, you may think that that's all a lot of work, a lot of double work. Bring it in, bring it out, loose fit, do this. In the long run, you're going to have a nice piece that was executed properly, designed and executed as it should have been. When I say preload and pre-plan, here's an example of that. Let me get this piece over here so you can see it. Oh, I love this wall cabinet. I can't wait to tell you about that. Where are you? Okay. All right. For instance, this end panel right here, this is the end of the galley. It's the peninsula that sticks out. This protrudes out into the sliding door area. So this part of the wall faces out of the van. This faces the passenger seat. Look at all of these elbow fittings I have here, right? I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 10 here. And the reason they're there is because I know that at some point in the future, Alex is going to put a beautiful piece of walnut plywood on the end of this galley module. And he's going to need a place to attach it from. I know he's going to do it because he's told me, Dad, if it's wood, don't touch it. He handles the wood. So I'm making sure that he has attachment points. Why so many? Because we're in a van A van has a varying climate by nature. It's damp, it's cold, it's hot, and I don't want this to warp. Plywood doesn't warp as quickly as some solid wood does, but we don't want it to warp. So we're gonna make sure it's been attached properly. Same thing on the back side. You can see I got a whole bunch of fittings back there. Now that's not to say the whole galley gets covered with plywood. That's not the point of 80-20. You use your wood sparingly where it's going to be seen, for instance. This entire face is going to be made up of doors and drawer faces. That's it. Backs are open, sides are open, floor's open. That's the whole point in 80-20, is you can shed some weight by not using plywood box construction. Have you ever heard me say that before? This is a wall cabinet, and this is almost 8 feet long. Almost 8 feet long, and it's one single unit, and it's the same shape and size all the way down. So what you're gonna have inside is an uninterrupted sight line down that passenger side of the van. And the reason I'm bringing that up now is because in the future, when we're watching that van tour video, I'm gonna mention the fact, remember back here on the table when I built this? This is why that uninterrupted sight line is so important, aesthetically speaking. It's gonna be beautiful. Now, here's a for instance. You see this connection where this, you can't see that. All right, hold on a second. Okay. Now you can see this, right? All right. This runs down into the top of this one. Now I used an elbow in here, right? Can you see that? I could have used a bridge plate, right? That would have served the same purpose. It would have made the connection. But I also know that at some point, my buddy Alex is going to come in here and put a beautiful walnut end panel on the side of this cabinet. Now, if I put my mounting apparatus here, it's in the way of his end panel. So, in designing and putting this together, you need to understand, in this case, this end panel has to be clean and unobstructed so that piece of plywood can fit on here nice. Now, right here, I can put in a connection point for that plywood, and I can put one in here. But look, this is a captive channel, and I need to put a connection point here. So, because I have not tightened up with Loctite just yet, it's going to be nothing for me to loosen this up and slide in the proper elbow. Another thing that you want to take a look at here, now I got to bring it down the other end. No, I think I can bring this to you. The way I got this designed, I'm going to use the channel in the 80-20 for the floor of my cabinet. And that also acts as the bottom of the cabinet on the outside. See, I'll cut a piece of plywood. I may wrap it. I may put it in. I may put stainless steel on it over the stove area, but it fits inside the groove. It's a very pretty look underneath. The problem is I cannot put recessed lighting under this cabinet, so I will have to put some sort of a strip light, LED strip light, which is fine. That's fine. You got to really think about how you're connecting these channels. Up front here, I had to use a different type of connector. Here's the type of connector I had to use up front. This is an internal connector. It slides in that way, and then you can put your next profile like that. And it's basically, it's buried in there. It's with a little set screw and an Allen key. It's not very strong. It's not the strongest connection. So you don't want to use it where you need to bear a lot of load or a lot of weight. But there are certain areas where you want to use that This is one of them, for instance. Let me take you over here on the fly so you can see it. You see it in there? And now that is because I have to use my channel for my floor. So I'm going to just notch that out, and then my wood can go in this channel and in this channel. Just notch it right out. So that's a good use for that type of a connection. Touching. Wherever the 80-20 touches the chassis, you want to make sure that you interrupt the touch with a piece of rubber. In a case like this wall cabinet, this entire rear plate is going to run along the chassis and be connected to it. So you get a nice long piece of rubber and you'll screw right through it. You've interrupted the thermal transfer of heat and cold from metal to metal with the rubber. Speaking of touching and making connections, you really have to make sure that your 80-20 is bonded or grounded to the chassis of the van. Now, you could say that we're drilling through and we're screwing all the 80-20 to the chassis in some fashion. And ironically, if you did that correctly, where you drill a hole and then you spray paint it, cover the bare metal, you've now broken the ground connection. There will be no good ground connection there. You need bare metal. So what I do, I actually make my own grounding straps. And all this is, it's very simple. It's a real clean, solid connection from the 80-20 to the chassis. Now, unfortunately for some of you who freak out every time I take the paint off the van, you have to do that with ground connections. You've got to make that connection on bare metal. So this is something, you can make this up. You can buy a grounding strap, or you can just make sure that one of your good elbows, make sure one of them is on bare metal where it attaches to the van chassis, and you'll be fine. But the grounding wire should be of a gauge that can handle the full potential of what might short out. For instance, if I had my inverter, 3,000 watt inverter on here that's got the potential for 300 amps. This wire's got to handle 300 amps, and it won't. This is only 8. Another thing I would suggest, obviously, you use stranded wire throughout the van. Do not put stranded wire under a nut. It's just not a good connection. You need to use, I'm adjusting my camera here, you need to use what's called a ferrule. Not feral, like a feral cat, a ferrule. That takes all of your strands, puts them inside an aluminum sleeve, and now when you bear down on that, you've got 100% connection. There isn't a wire in the van that doesn't have a ferrule on one end or a terminal. Full ring terminal, not a spade, not the fork terminal, full ring. Should be done. You've got to ground every one of these aluminum modules to the van. Very important. And one more thing I got to show you. Look at this thing. What the hell is this? What is this, a pipe? No. This is my mock-up for my wall cabinet. I do this frequently. I'll get a few small pieces of profile of 80-20 that are the actual pieces that I want to use in my wall cabinet. I cut these to the lengths that I think are going to be appropriate, and then I dry fit these in the van. Come on, I'll show you. See this? I got some screws I mounted in the back of this plate. This is the long 2-inch plate. Those correspond with the holes I'm going to use to mount. And this is how I arrived at the proper length for each of these pieces You know, nothing's level in a van, but if you ever see cabinets, sometimes they're slightly off. They look down or they look up. Sometimes that's a style maneuver, but sometimes it's also a mistake. So this is how I got to where I wanted to be with this. Now I applied those cuts to the full, and now once I get my rib nuts in, boom.